Kishibe, hop on the beat!
This month brought us yet another chapter of Thus Spoke Kishibe Rohan, titled Episode 12, Bruschetta. It's been about 3 years since the last release for the spin-off series, that being the 2-part chapter Drip Painting Style. I'm a big fan of the Rohan stories for their ability to bring completely new concepts to the JoJo series, and I consider some of them to be among Araki's best work. Needless to say, I've been greatly anticipating this chapter, so I don't mind taking a bit of a hiatus from Part 9 to get it. So let's not waste any more time and get right to the chapter. The chapter opens with a conversation between Rohan and his editor Kyoka over video call. Rohan discusses his upcoming chapter, saying the theme of it is evolution. He says that athletes seem to show signs of Darwinian evolution by improving at baseball throughout history, and that the same applies to paintings and manga. Rohan notices a strange girl walking by who appears to have just been swimming and warns her not to cross over into his property. Rohan reveals that he's actually at his villa in Hawaii, where he has come to study bird species for their isolated evolution. After heading inside, Rohan makes some bruschetta and starts hearing strange noises. Rohan continues hearing noises from different places, eventually realizing that the sounds are copying his own. Outside, he finds the girl again, who is leaking a strange substance from her ears. Rohan figures out that the echoing sounds are really coming from within his own body and begins showing the same symptoms as the girl. Using Heaven's Door, Rohan learns the girl is named Soa and is 4 years old. She has been afflicted by a condition giving her heightened hearing, making it impossible to do anything from how loud everything becomes. Her parents are also affected, and they've been like this for 9 days. Reading himself with Heaven's Door, Rohan finds that he's otherwise completely healthy but has a foreign substance in his body. A nearby snail crawling becomes so loud that Rohan vomits and is incapacitated. He notices strange moths landing on and consuming the snails, and learns from Soa's book that the snails make the condition worse and should be avoided. The moth seems to be a newly evolved species which uses the dust left behind while it flies around to echo sounds inside of people's bodies. This is done so that when the moth's prey appear nearby, the victims act like a food detector for them. Rohan barely manages to grab a moth and tries to read it with Heaven's Door to find any kind of weakness. He learns that the moth hates a compound found in eucalyptus trees, and Rohan manages to cure it by making a tea from the tree's leaves. Afterwards, Rohan notices that Soa lives across the bay and that the moths evolved in the nearby jungle, thanks to the island's special life energy. Despite her condition, Soa was able to swim across the bay and scale a cliff to reach Rohan, showing that she was actually an evolved being as well. The chapter ends by showing off Rohan's bruschetta recipe. I very much enjoyed this chapter. Like most Rohan stories, it involved him taking on some kind of new and mysterious life form, and I think the evolved moths filled that role quite well. Overall, the chapter is very similar to a previous one, Rainy Monday, where Rohan encountered a new type of bug that lives inside of electronics. That story had a kind of uniquely harrowing ending where the bug continued to exist and was implied to just move on to its next victim. Pretty much the same happens here, and the moth is still out there, although Rohan manages to save the day here without any casualties. I do think it's pretty interesting that the moths have a kind of stone mask motif, and it seems like they're based on the real-life Death's Head moth. I don't think there's any extra significance to the masks, with it just being a sort of scary coincidence, just like the real moth. As always, I'm also happy to see Kyoka remaining a staple character in the Rohan series. Throughout her original appearance, to her expanded role in the TV drama series, and her reintroduction in the manga, I think she's become a pretty iconic part of Rohan as a character. And she brings some welcome humor for Rohan's own eccentricities to bounce off of. This leads to my favorite gag in the chapter, with the reveal of Rohan being in Hawaii and expecting Kyoka to fly out to him to get his manuscript. At its core, Thus Spoke Kishibe Rohan is a mystery series, so judging the chapter, we should take the mystery aspects of it into account. In this case, it would be Rohan investigating the strange noise and his discovery of the moths, which I think was handled quite well. I really liked the seemingly mundane idea of him tracking down a noise in his house spiraling into such an insane outcome. The main theme of the chapter, as stated by Rohan, is the idea of evolution. The moths underwent a type of isolated evolution that is witnessed in places like the Galapagos Islands, developing a hyper-specific way of tracking down their food. The young girl Soa also evolved, and after being put in danger by the moths, was able to adapt and do some impossible feats to reach Rohan. As always, this fits into the classic Araki formula of crossing science fiction with the supernatural. He takes the simple idea of evolution and allows that to act as the framework for a frightening creature like the evolved moths to come about. I also really enjoyed the solution to the problem coming from the eucalyptus trees. With the moth having evolved on the island, it has an advantage of being in its own environment. But eucalyptus trees were actually not native to Hawaii. The trees originate from Australia, making their way overseas in the 1800s, where they were planted all over in places like Hawaii and California. They're actually considered somewhat invasive since they leach a toxin into the soil that prevents other species from growing. So I think it was really fitting having a non-native species save the day here, since it is not part of the moth's natural environment. One topic a lot of people are discussing with this chapter is the setting of Hawaii, as well as the offhand mention of a robbery at Rohan's villa. These are both pretty clear references to Rohan's appearance in Part 9, the JoJo Lands. Some have used this to argue that the Rohan manga, or at least the more recent chapters, are actually set in the new universe rather than the old. However, this argument is nothing new, and honestly, nothing has really changed here. The same type of argument popped up in the early chapters of the JoJo Lands, which contained references to Hot Summer Martha and Rohan's dog Bakeen. However, I don't think these references should be taken totally at face value. While the existence of Rohan in Part 9 throws some confusion into it, this is really just another version of Rohan for the new universe, and is not the one depicted in the spin-off. As we know, earlier Rohan chapters contain direct appearances from original universe characters like Josuke, Koichi, and Okuyasu, who would not exist in the Steel Ball Run timeline. This has caused some to argue that only the newer chapters from Hot Summer Martha onward are in the new universe. But this is actually contradicted by an official source, since when Hot Summer Martha first released in the JoJo magazine, it was actually said that like the other chapters, it takes place in the original universe of JoJo, rather than Steel Ball Run's continuity. Considering the time placement of that chapter in 2021, that means it is within the Irene universe that appeared after the end of Part 6. The Rohan chapters have also incorporated elements from future parts before. In Mutsukabe Hill, one of the characters is seen with SBR brand clothing. In DNA and Rainy Monday, Morio's Seiten Birdies baseball team is mentioned, which originates from JoJolion. And on a map featured in Poaching Seashore, the Twin Pines is shown, a location also seen in Part 8. What I think Araki is doing here is sort of merging the two Morios together, just like how elements from Part 4 can appear in Part 8's Morio, new locations introduced in Part 8 are retroactively added to the world of Part 4. I actually like this quite a bit since it fleshes out both versions of the world simultaneously in a way that isn't intrusive to either story. While the Rohan manga does include concepts and characters from JoJo, we do have to remember that at least from a meta standpoint, it's a spin-off and therefore mostly self-contained. So I think Araki is making a smart approach to writing the chapters here by making them just disconnected enough to align with either world of JoJo. With this new chapter, we have the appearance of Rohan's Hawaii villa and a mention of a burglary a year prior. So that can be interpreted as Jodio and the gang's mission from Part 9, or in the original universe's case, just a normal break-in. In Part 9, we got a mention of Rohan's dog Bakeen and his character Hot Summer Martha, so it would seem like some version of that chapter's events could have occurred in both, without getting in the way of either continuity. In other JoJo news, we obviously saw the announcement of the Steel Ball Run anime adaptation earlier this month. I went over that as well as the JoJo Day event and other recent news in my last video. Since then, we've gotten some more details about the next big release, the 5th issue of the JoJo magazine coming on May 23rd. As we already know, the magazine has some focus on Rohan, and a new Rohan illustration has just been revealed for the cover. It's also known to contain a feature all about Rohan and a new entry in the short story collection. On top of that, we've learned 3 new things coming. First is a new short story titled Risotto Nero Observes, obviously focused on risotto, and another titled The Stray Cat Leaves with the Spring Breeze, starring Aluso and Formaggio. Finally, we're getting a new spin-off gag manga chapter titled Echoes Act 50 by Kosuke Masuda, which will focus on Koichi. As always, you can expect me to cover those and anything else in the magazine once it releases. One of the projects I'm planning on releasing next is a video where I go over each of the Rohan chapters in detail and rank them in a tier list. The entirety of that video is already written, but before I could start work on it, we got the announcement of this new chapter. Now that this review is done, I can thankfully move on to including it in that video and starting to edit it together. I think this may actually end up being my longest video to date, passing my current longest, which is my video on all the Steel Ball Run racers. I think it's turning out good so far, so if there's any similar video ideas you'd like to see me tackle, do let me know in the comments. If you want to keep up with future videos, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. You can also join the Hum and Beat Discord to be notified on any new uploads and chapter releases. Finally, I'd appreciate if you help support the channel on Patreon or by becoming a YouTube member. It's thanks to your support that I can put more focus into making these videos. All members get their name featured at the end of the video and can submit viewer questions that I answer at the end of my main videos. Thank you for watching. This is the part of the video where I thank my $5 and up patrons. Thank you to Doorbell, Crayon, Rigovids, Zucato, Pumpkin Doge, Marrow, Sponge Cake, Cakext, Feliciano Rabaja, Rayana Meme, Christian McDonough, Emmanuel Etienne, Pulse Dog, Zach Greenfield, FIFO, Rob Goliath, Jacob Smith, Big T, Gold, Red Hot Mayonnaise, Zenkai, Royal Slush, Keenan, Perry, Cho Henshin, Saint Bobo, Max Verstappen, Kira Nat-Yoshikage, John Garcia, Crankin' Plank, Puffin32, Fran Studios, and the Jolly Old Christian Hobbit.